There is a conversation that has taken over sports talk radio and basically anyone who talks sports. It could be radio, podcasts, barbershops, guys at the bar. That is the NFL MVP. Listen, I mean, I got takes. It is kind of exhausting. Anytime anyone has a great game, it's like, can't forget about him. Got to be in the conversation. Like, I'll be honest, again, I host Saturday nights 11 to 2 a.m. Eastern time, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., and, that Joe Burrow game was awesome, but people were like, don't count Joe Burrow out of the MVP race, and I'm like, I mean, they're 8-8, are almost certainly going to miss the playoffs. I think we can count him out.
I think he's done.
And, by the way, putting up historic numbers, but guys put up incredible numbers every year for bad teams. The stat is incredible. 250-plus yards and 3 touchdowns in 8 straight games. He hit both those thresholds. That's an incredible season.
Yeah.
But if your team misses the playoffs, it's kind of hard for me to argue that you should win the MVP. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be in contention, whatever.
Yeah.
By the way, I saw some of this with Sam Darnold today. It's like, oh my God. I mean, Sam Darnold, 14-2, they could get the number 1 seed. I'm like, don't count him out. I'm like, no, I think we can count him out.
I think he's done.
Yeah. So right now, according to one prominent sports book, I won't name it because I don't know if Covino and Rich have a preferred sports book, but right now, Josh Allen is the favorite, minus 320. Lamar Jackson, plus 250. Saquon at plus 1,600. And then it is followed by Joe Burrow, Sam Darnold, and Jared Goff. These courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook. Let me just ask you. I mean, do you have a definitive, or are you, I mean, it's going to be tough to say that you're waiting to see because obviously Josh Allen, as Isaac just told us, he'll start to keep his start streak alive, but probably will not play more than a series or 2. Obviously, Saquon Barkley. Let me ask you really quick on Saquon, just in general, outside of the MVP conversation. Would you, if you're Saquon, would you want to play? If you were Nick Sirianni, would you play him as he's obviously approaching the single-season rushing record, but obviously Philadelphia's playoff position is also pretty set at this point as well.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you teach, what you preach as a team, right? Like if we're teaching that no one player is above, our team and what our goals are, which some organizations and some teams, heavily rely on, then he wouldn't play. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's already set, or even, if he played one series, almost like a preseason game and, was out there with your team, I understand that as well. But going out there actively trying to get a record for the team to put him in that position, knowing you got a long road, possibly a long road coming up to try to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, I would not. But then, as I take a step back and I think about legacy and I think about what sports fans remember and what they think about as the years progress and pass by, it's usually some weird stat or some record that people remember, right? I mean, if he doesn't break the record, we'll just remember him having a really good year in 2024, and it's be like, yeah, other people have had good years, and they kind of fall in that same vein.
Yeah.
But like I said, as a player, for me, if I was him, I would want to break the record for that reason. But also, I would see the team in the situation not putting him in harm's way and giving themselves a chance to win the Super Bowl here. So I'd sit him if I was the Eagles.
Yeah, I would probably sit him as well.
Yeah.
And let me one last question on this. You said depends on what you preach as a team.
Yep.
But let me ask you this: I understand. Hey, nobody's ahead of the team. We also have all been in a locker room at some point. We know there is a hierarchy. Like, all those guys know, wow, we would not be in this position without Saquon, right? Like, it wouldn't be if pretty much all the other starters were playing and you decided to put Saquon in street clothes. I don't want to say you speak for everybody in the locker room, but most of those guys, even if they're starters, are like, yeah, I get why Saquon isn't playing today, right?
Well, none of those guys should be playing. If you're a high level player, if you're going to sit Saquon, you got to sit those guys as well.
Okay,
so I don't think you're just sitting him and then not sitting other important players on your team. That sets another precedent as well. And so that's what I mean. Like, it's either all in, all out. If somebody's going to sit, the other guys are going to sit as well. If everybody else plays, he's going to play as well.
Very good. Let's get into the obviously the MVP race. By the way, should mention the Eagles have officially clinched the NFC East and the 2 seed in the playoffs, so we'll see what happens there. So like I said, Josh Allen right now is the favorite. Lamar Jackson right behind. Saquon is behind them. I obviously have my takes, but curious for your perspective on the conversation that has sparked a million sports talk radio debates.
Yeah, the discourse around the NFL MVP has just been sickening to me. I'm so tired of it.
Yeah, I kind of am too, to be honest.
It's one of those things where, 4 weeks ago, Josh Allen had it wrapped up by all the pundits, all the people that, have votes and have a voice on TV or all these different platforms. And it's just like, no, it's not over. It's still 4 or 5 weeks left to go. And you got somebody in Lamar Jackson and Saquon Barkley for that matter, that are playing in meaningful games and putting up, historic numbers also. And so for them to say that, and especially coming from guys who have MVP votes and saying, this is the one take that really gets at me, Aaron.
Sure.
The guys that have votes and they're saying 4 weeks out that, maybe it's, Lamar's having a great year, but maybe it's voters fatigue. Be like, what?
Sure.
Why would you say that if you have a position of authority and you have a position of, giving somebody or rewarding somebody with something, saying, yeah, you're good enough, but we're tired of voting for you? That just doesn't set the right precedent for anybody. So to think that most of these outcomes are fair when it comes to award season, that doesn't help at all. And that's the part that really gets me. Like, let this thing play out and stop trying to be the first one to say something and have a point.
Well, that's the problem with the entire industry. And that's something that I think as time goes on, I both get, but it also does bother me a little bit as far as like, yeah, you want your voice to be heard. And if everybody's just like, yeah, who's having a great season? Josh Allen. It's like, yeah, that doesn't really cut through the noise.
Right.
So you gotta, the example I always use was like Anthony Edwards, the basketball player in the playoffs last year. It went from like, oh, he's like a rising star to, oh, maybe he's the future face of the league to, oh, he's actually the next Michael Jordan. It's like, how about we let a guy win like one NBA title before we call him the next Michael Jordan? But I understand why the conversation becomes why people feel the need to kind of always escalate something. I'm with you. I'd like to see everything play itself out. So who is your? I don't know if you're not a voter, right?
No.
Okay. Because I think voters can't officially reveal their whatever.
Yeah.
Who is your MVP right now?
My MVP, I would give it to Josh Allen right now.
Okay.
And it's not voters fatigue for me.
Sure.
It's just one of those things where I thought Buffalo would just be a wild card type of team.
Yeah.
If they made the playoffs this year. That was my ceiling for them. So the fact that he elevated them to win the division, had some monster games, monster wins, that's what it's about for me. I think he brought that team to different levels and different heights, and that's an MVP. Now, can Lamar get it? Absolutely. He's balling. If Saquon breaks the record, absolutely in the conversation. But Josh is my MVP right now as well. What about you?
Yeah, I actually agree with you on Josh Allen. I thought you were going to go with Lamar.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and to be clear, let's say this. Picking one, I can't. I don't want to speak for you, but you don't strike me as the kind of guy that I got to tear down these 3 other guys to tell you why. And this is not to say that Lamar is not phenomenal. I just look at Josh Allen like if you paid attention, I know you do, but I mean for the average fan, this was supposed to be the year where Buffalo, this is kind of the year the big contract extension kicks in for Josh Allen. They had to get rid of Gabe Davis. They had to get rid of Stephon Diggs. They had to get rid of Jordan Poyer, some other guys on defense.
Yep.
Like this was supposed to be the year, the regression without all those vets that have been with that organization for this entire run. Because I've heard a lot of the whole like, well, this isn't the best statistical season he's ever had, and then it becomes the same thing that you just said of like, you're just giving it to Josh Allen because you don't want to give Lamar another one. It's like, no, like Lamar is awesome, and nobody's saying that Lamar isn't awesome. But as of right now, they haven't technically clinched the division. Now, obviously, they're one loss back, or they're one win ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers, so they're going to win the division. But it's not like they have a 4-5 game lead in the division like Josh Allen does. They've taken some losses. Obviously, Derrick Henry has played a huge role in their success. Yeah. Not to say that Lamar hasn't been awesome, but I think that all plays a role to me. Is like Lamar got reinforcements in the offseason. Josh Allen lost guys. And then I'll also say this. I actually think Saquon should be more in the conversation. Yeah. And I don't buy this whole you can't give it to anyone other than a quarterback, because does no one remember what the Philadelphia Eagles were at this time last year? Mm-hmm. They were completely imploding. There were conversations this time last year, and I know you know, and I think most of the audience knows, like, don't bring back Nick Sirianni. Like, this is a disaster, right? Yeah. And so, like, I just look at it, and I don't think this is necessarily, like, should be an indicator, but we have completely different perspectives on literally everybody else in the Philadelphia building because of Saquon Barkley. Mm-hmm. Like, might have saved Nick Sirianni's job. I know they brought in the two expensive coordinators, but listen, if they can't run the ball the way they're running the ball, Kellen Moore, listen, I don't think it's going to happen, but is it inconceivable that with the coaching candidates that we have, Ben Johnson says, I'm not taking one of these bad jobs, whoever, Rex Ryan, like, it's not inconceivable Kellen Moore gets a head coaching job because of Saquon Barkley. Mm-hmm. So, like, I to me, I think he has elevated that entire team. And again, I understand 2 seasons ago they were in a Super Bowl. I understand all this stuff. But by the way, Jalen Hurts looks so much more competent with a competent run game around him. Yeah. And I just feel like, to me, he should be more in the conversation. And I know he's like a clear number 3, and we all appreciate the statistical stuff. But I always look at it as this, Kerry, is I take the word valuable very seriously. And I feel like in both the NBA and the NFL, I say this all the time in the NBA, is like the NBA MVP is no longer the most valuable player. It's I call it the cool stats award, because it's like, oh, this guy has a triple-double, and Jokic averages 11 assists per game as a 7'1" guy. And it's like, but who's the most valuable?
It's most valuable, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm rambling, so I'll be quick here. But like, remember the year, like in the NBA, I remember the year Chris Paul went to Phoenix, and they went from like 13th in the West to like the 1 seed in the. I'm like, how is he not the most valuable player in this sport? And I think that was one of the years it went to Jokic, So, yeah. And so I feel like we too often, you got to give it to. In basketball, I think it's just about the stats. I think in football, it's you got to give it to a quarterback. And I look at the football situation this year. I would give it to Allen, but I actually I would make a stronger argument that Saquon is the most valuable player. Mm-hmm. More than Lamar, and maybe even more than Josh, because I just think it changed everything about that entire building. So I've talked long enough. I'll throw it over to you.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, I think that's the caveat, right? It's what does most valuable player mean, and it's definitely has taken legs of its own and ran down this course of it has to be the quarterback and the quarterback has to have the best record and, all these parameters, but I never knew they existed.
I know,
it's
like
right? That thing, right?
Like
it becomes that. So, but for me, like I said, it's very simple in the standpoint of, yes, you can look at the tape and you can look on TV and you can tell who's the most electrifying player, and that's Lamar Jackson. I think that's clear cut, with Saquon probably being second in that.
No doubt.
And then Josh Allen probably being third in that.
Sure.
So it's like, if you look at it from that standpoint, cool. But most valuable player to their team and to their situation right now, this Bills team has overachieved to a point where it's like that guy looks like he's probably the most valuable player.
All right, there you go. Torres and Kerry Rhodes, just 2 huge Lamar Jackson haters. No, I'm kidding. Listen,
that's my guy,
dude. No, I mean, it's and that's what it is unfortunate about these conversations is. It always feels like when you stand on, what do the kids say? Stand
on business.
Yeah, stand on business. Yeah, it's like when you're standing on business on one guy, it feels like you're crushing the other. It's like we all freaking love watching Lamar Jackson play. Yeah. Like, by the way, we talked about this on our Saturday show. It's like this notion that somehow like Lamar has all these haters out there. It's like, no, 99% of people love watching him play, and I think most people are just like, yeah, you got to get to a Super Bowl. Yeah. No different than Josh Allen. I don't really think Lamar Jackson has haters.
Aaron, you know why this discourse is really happening?
Go ahead.
It's because of X.
Sure. Oh, no doubt.
That's how many? Everybody has an opinion on it,
so
and it's not a neutral one ever.
No,
it's polarizing the opposite way, and it's all it is just a push and pull effect that happens where either you like that guy or you don't like the other one. It's not I like them both, and points to show why.
Yeah.
The character situation really hurts, I think, a lot of that as well. If you don't have the extended character thing on X, where your point has to be a little bit more
sure,
like precise. It's hard, but I think I blame X.
No, it's all of these conversations, like the college football play of like Alabama has to be in and SMU has to be out, and it's like, well, there's nuance. Alabama kind of stunk here, and SMU wasn't great there, and it's like, but we don't really do that in sports discourse anymore. Like I said, it's just, and I get it. If you want your opinion to come, to come through, you got to come in strong. But it's like at a certain point, it's like some of this stuff is just ridiculous. Yep. What do you got, Danny G?
All right, so you guys started the segment by talking about whether or not you would play Saquon.
Yeah.
What if his MVP candidacy kind of rides on whether or not he breaks Eric Dickerson's record?
It does.
Right?
And I just, you don't sacrifice that for the team, though. And I'm saying just organizationally, if you have your star player that's actively trying to break a record, if it was 30 yards, that's a different discussion. He's got to play. He's got 100 yards to go. That's a whole game.
Yeah, but the Eagles been averaging almost 190 yards a game.
That's true. Ground. He could break one.
Yeah,
I could see him. I mean, that's what I was telling Aaron. I was like, maybe he plays a couple of series, but he's not playing the whole game.
Would you give him a half?
Woo!
That'd be a hell of a first and second quarter.
I know exactly. You give him a quarter and he gets hurt on. I mean, it's just. I don't think it's worth the risk, Danny.
Yeah. The other thing too is, and I know this is obvious, but. Like back in the day, the second seed would get a bye. Now you don't get a bye. You got to play next week.
Exactly.
So it's like,
that's true.
I mean, if all the guys in the locker room want it, I mean, who am I to say?
That part, yeah.
But then to your point, you got to play everybody. Then you can't put them behind the second string line.
That's what I'm saying.
So it's then the second string defense. Now you're down 14-0, and it's like Saquon's out there,
exactly.
Running behind the second string line. So I guess it's an interesting conversation. I would guess that pretty much none of their starters play. So
yeah.